Insights, folks, with none other than former NASA newsman, God's newsman, as dubbed by Hilton Sutton and Dave Wilkerson and J.R. Church, founder of the Christian News Network, none other than Wally Wood, Wallace Wood. Hello there, Wally.
Hello there, Brad. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. It's always good to see you.
I can't buy your intros, bro. You have a way of blowing up a balloon bigger than its capacity to hold.
Well, it's just the truth, Wally. And I'm always thrilled to talk to you and see you, as I am the people that value this. There's a good chance, folks, what you're watching right now, maybe the only true news you're going to see today. And with all that said, you've been talking about the New World Order since the 70s.
Yes.
Of course, even when they were broadcasting their plans and movies, that's what they do, folks. And
if you want to see a real good movie that gives you what I consider an excellent background into how this all got started and how it's been moving along, Brotherhood of the Bell.
Wow. Brotherhood of the Bell.
Brotherhood of the Bell. It's centered on a secret society at a fictitious college university. But if you know anything about the history of how this all got started, it's not all that fictitious. They just changed the names to protect the innocent.
Well, there you go.
But it's started Glenn Ford, and it is a remarkable story into how the secret societies are working to this day and how they became part of this global creation of a new world system. Now, it dates back to the 50s and 60s. It originated as a black and white film. They've since added color to it, and you'll see some familiar faces in the story, but I do encourage everyone, and even the Bible studies I've held over the years, I've always recommended that movie to be a basis of knowledge going forward. So Brotherhood of the Bell is the name of the movie. I get no royalties from plugging it, but I'll tell you what, it's one of those valuable tools in better understanding our times. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Brotherhood of the Bell.
Yes.
Well, you should get royalties from it. I mean, that would only be fair, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know about that, but it's I think what it helps to do, it gives balance to the so-called term of conspiracy theories. That term has really become overblown in recent years because it's become a tongue in the cheek, slap in the face of those of us who know conspiracy history.
Right.
Now, granted, there are extremists of every cut, of every topic and issue, okay? And so even in the area of the truth, you've got extremists.
Right.
So my whole thing has been from the very beginning, and I want to kind of start this out by quoting something Billy Graham said in 1962. I was 12 years old at the time, and he said it on television and in one of his crusades. And this kind of helps sets the stage because this brings it more into contemporary time frame. But he said, world events are moving very rapidly now. I pick up the Bible in one hand, and I pick up the newspaper in the other, and I read almost the same words in the newspaper as I read in the Bible. Those predictions are coming to pass rapidly. It's wonderful to know that the Bible is still true and it's being fulfilled every day round about us. So this served as the framework of what started my ministry back in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And then I came upon another ancient quote from one Isaac Newton, a very known name in history.
Right.
In his day, and he said, about the times of the end, a body of men will be raised up who will turn their attention to the prophecies and insist upon their literal interpretation in the midst of much clamor and opposition. And I'm numbered among them. I've probably been thrown out of more churches than I've ever been allowed to speak in.
Well, you're ahead of the game, brother, and you always have been,
Yeah.
it's not in vogue to say the wrong things out of fear
Yeah,
of losing your 501c3 of the
and see, I don't go in offering opinion. I avoid Wallywood opinion like the plague. Uh, but to have been accused of being speculative, sensational, and everything overboard on that, I simply point back to the evidence. I say, folks, it's not me, it's the evidence that's spectacular and sensational because you've never seen it before, you've never heard it before. And so, what we want to do today is to share with you the beginnings of my trek in this venture of showing that those ancient prophecies, as far back as Daniel, have now come into vogue. And those prophecies are today's headlines. And I want to share with you the foundation by which this ministry got started and how it is that the Lord told me. I've shown you in my word what's going to happen. Now I'm going to show you how. And you're not to give your opinion on anything.
right.
You don't say a word without the documentation to back it up. And I'll see to it you have all the documentation you need. So that's where we are in this ministry, and that's why we have this show.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that we're talking about it. The beginning of the New World Order documents.
Yes.
Nothing new. Ancient plan.
And everything I show you here is available for you to follow up on yourself and get copies of. Okay. Because even our politicians are ignorant of much of what I'm going to show you here today. So if you're ready to begin this, we'll start it. Okay.
Let's do it.
At the very root. 1972, I went looking for a job at a newspaper. I didn't care what newspaper it was. I just wanted to get into the world of journalism. And so I set out on track to call on all the newspapers I could find here in Houston, and got rejected by all of them because I had no background in it. Okay. And so on my way home, I happened upon another newspaper that I was somewhat familiar with. I thought, well, okay, we'll just make this a 100% rejection day rather than go home having a 99.99% rejection day. So I pulled into that newspaper. It's called the Tribune, originally the Houston Tribune. And it was Houston's conservative newspaper. It featured Paul Harvey and a number of other well-known Phil Schlafly, conservative editors and writers. So I pulled in, went to the front desk, offered my services for a job of any kind, even emptying the trash. And so I was ushered to the very back office of the building to an old codger named Tom Lang. Tom already had 50 plus years experience in the newspaper business. And you could walk into his office and tell that this was one bulldog of a man, literally. Had jowls. He had a Dick Tracy hat on, a black suit. He was in an office full of newspapers and ashes from his stogie. And he's typing away. He's typing away on a Royal Underwood manual typewriter. And I show up at his front door, office door, and he looks over his bifocals. He said, "Yeah, boy, how can I help you?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job, Mr. Lang." Now he's still typing away. "Got any experience?" "No, sir, just a high school newspaper." "Got any college?" Still typing away. "No, sir." "So you don't have a college degree in journalism?" "No, sir." Still typing. "You're hired."
He was like, "I can work with that guy."
I pulled myself up off the floor and I said, "Do what, sir?" At that moment, he stopped typing, looked square at me. He says, "Young man, old codgers like me, we're darn tired of taking young whippersnappers like you, fresh out of college, with nothing more than a piece of paper to hang on the wall, saying that you got some education and you don't know a darn thing."
He can mold you, man.
Yes. He said, "Show up here first thing Monday morning." So I went home with this joyful report. I'd been hired. Well, as it turned out, they were, being a conservative newspaper, This was during the time of the Richard Nixon, George McGovern presidential campaign. McGovern being the Democrat, Nixon being the Republican. And so they assigned me the task of doing some inside research behind what they knew to be and called the inside manipulators of American politics.
Right.
And in doing so, they assigned me the task of becoming familiar with this book called Tragedy and Hope, written by Dr. Carol Quigley of Georgetown University. And he was professor of history there. Now, in case you wish to get it, it's a 1,300-page volume. Real good nighttime, bedtime reading, okay? But this book is nothing short of being a journal of the insiders. He names them by name, gives their photographs, tells their background and their role in creating a new world order. And this was in the days before it even became known as a new world order. And on page 950 in this book, he says, I have no aversion to it, speaking of the insiders, or to their claims, and have been close to it for the better part of 20 years. My only chief difference of opinion is that they wish to remain unknown, and I feel their role in history is significant enough to be known. And so they allowed him for 2.5 years to go through all their papers, secret papers, and their journals and their letters, and putting this book together. And it's actually a history book into the new era of global politics like you'll never read from anywhere else. And in the course of time, he became the mentor professor for one man who later became known as President Bill Clinton.
Wow.
Carol Quigley was Bill Clinton's professor at Georgetown University.
Says a lot right there.
And it set the stage for Clinton to then become a Rhodes Scholar. But it is the anchor. And to me, having never been introduced to any of this before, coming straight off the streets, I began to devour this book. Well, it just so happened that the weekend I got that job, I also landed a job at a radio station here in Houston. And it was fully automated, so it didn't require much from me. I was the weekend news and radio station operator. All I had to do was just give headline news and weather forecasts every quarter hour. That's it. The computer took care of everything else. Now, we're talking about 1970s, okay? So everything was on reels of tape, things of this nature. So it was in that environment that I found myself with my Bible open to Daniel chapter 2 and this book open, reading it. And I mentioned Daniel chapter 2 because that's the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel's interpretation of that dream lays the outline of the course of history from Babylon to the last days, the kingdom that would rule the earth in the last days with the Antichrist. So that was the blueprint and the template of history that I was studying for. So this is where I had that encounter with the Lord. And I've already told your audience that encounter when the lights began to dim and the voice said, my son, I've shown you in my word what's going to happen. Now I'm going to show you how. And you're not to say a word without the documentation to back it up. I'll see to it you have all the documentation you need. So this book became the Bible of documentation, because from this have come many other treatises and works from others who have verified what Dr. Carol Quigley uncovered. Now, in the course of time, and my recommendation to the audience is to go to Daniel chapter 2, and let's see if I can get this on camera, and you will read of the great image in that chapter of the course of world events and world empires. Okay.
Yeah.
The image with the head of gold. Okay. And you owe yourself the opportunity to become well aware of what God laid forth as the course of history from that point forward. Forgive the glare. I've got this in a plastic sheet. But that's where my research began. And from there, I began to uncover the track of developments that were going to better define what we were doing in the world and where we were headed in the world in creating this global empire for this one last empirical leader. Of interest to the American audience especially, a book came out in the 80s, I want to say in the 80s, having to do with the need for a new U.S. Constitution. Now, these were bold steps being taken by the insiders, but as time went on, they became more settled in their boldness because there was nothing that the American people were going to be able to do to stop them. Got it?
Right.
So this particular book came out in the 80s, 70s, entitled The Emerging Constitution by Rexford Guy Tugwell. And Tugwell was in the administration of President Roosevelt. And this book gives a very systematic breakdown of what's wrong with our current Constitution, why it is out of date, and why it needs to be replaced. And what Tugwell has done is that he has laid out the argument for the need for a new U.S. Constitution. And then in the back of this book, he puts out a new model, a constitution to the new states of America, not the United States, the new states.
Wow.
The plans were already underway by which this country would be divided into 10 regions, doing away with the 50 states officially. So consequently, from that, we had President Nixon issued an executive order, 11647. Look it up, 11647. And in that executive order, the lighting is something else here. He divided the country into 10 federal regions. Each region has its own regional capital, and leading that regional capital is, in his terms, a regional commissar, not a governor, but commissar in the language of that executive order. And each state governor is answerable to his respective regional commissar. Now,
that was Nixon.
That was Nixon, 11647. And February 1st, 1972, if I recall correctly. So in this document and in this new layout, we were on a developmental plan of regionalizing America. Now, matter of background, he wasn't the first to do this. There's a group in Italy known as the Club of Rome. And the Club of Rome was better known for the book that they published, Limits to Growth, in which they outlined the fact that Earth was reaching the climax of its ability to be self-sustainable. And what are we going to do as a global society to ward off the bad times that we see coming? And so what they did, they divided the world into 10 regions. And after that, Mr. Nixon divided this country into 10 regions. Those 10 regions have survived the decades and have now become known as the FEMA regions. And when you look at a FEMA map, it's the exact same layout as the original map that Mr. Nixon had drawn of the 10 federal regions. With the 10 federal regions comes a new name for the new America. It's no longer the United States of America, but the new states of America. I hope you're catching all this. There's a lot of information here. All right.
Yes.
And so in that capacity, we have a new flag. All right, let's get this in here. Okay. That's the new federal flag of the new states of America. And it appeared in the December 1973 issue of Smithsonian Magazine. That's where it was first published. Now, the naysayers would go to say, well, this was all just speculative and things of this nature. Well, you can call it whatever you wish. The point is, the work began. And with that work, progress was being made. Now, around that same time, a Declaration of Interdependence was issued by Congress. I hope this isn't blowing your mind too much, but I have a
Doesn't
copy.
surprise me at all.
I have a copy of the Declaration of Interdependence issued by Congress, in which they say in the opening preamble, to establish a new world order of compassion, peace, justice, and security, it is essential that mankind free itself from the limitations of national prejudice and acknowledge that the forces that unite it are incomparably deeper than those that divide it, that all people are part of one global community, dependent on one body of resources, bound together by the ties of a common humanity and associated in a common adventure on the planet Earth. Let us therefore join together to vindicate and realize this great truth that mankind is one, and as one will nobly save or irreparably lose the heritage of thousands of years of civilization. And let us further resolve the principles which should animate and inspire us all as a civilization if we are to survive. This was signed by over 200 U.S. congressmen at the time, calling for America's participation in a new world order for the survival of mankind. So this was all happening at the same time, Brant. And it escaped all of us coming up because it wasn't part of the teaching agenda of our schooling at the time, but we were all subjected to it through things like social studies and other such disciplines. So this is just part one. I see that we're fast running out of time here. So this will be part one of my unveiling, pulling back the veil on the not only the development, but the evolution and the maturity of this new world order. And I look forward to upcoming opportunities and showing you more pieces that isn't intended to scare you. Both parties have been involved in the development of this for the same common good. What can we do to save America and the world from its own cataclysmic, predictable demise? And so it's being done in the name of nobility, but the Bible prophesied it was going to evolve into a final one world empire with one leader who we know as the Antichrist. So we're there, brother. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time, but I hope we laid a good
That's why we're here. That's why we're here, my man. Folks, you know, the Bible is true. It's the only thing you can trust.
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, we're not selling you any snake oil here or trying to read your palm or.
Yeah, I'm not selling any books myself.
But it wouldn't be wrong if you did. I mean, you got great books, Wally, but you know, we're just sharing the truth with you.
Yeah.
You don't see a bunch of sponsors on our productions, even, after these
Right.
are polished and edited and aired, because we don't want to be canceled, and we're not for sale.
Right.
But, Wally, what would be the website you'd like to point everybody to? You got 5 of them, I know,
I
but
got 5 of them. I would start always with WallywoodMinistries.com, because that serves as the springboard into the other websites. That and the revelationfile.com. Those are the main 2. And I take you down a trail, a prophetic trail, showing that how very true God's word has always been, even historically. The Bible has never been disproven historically, scientifically, or any way, shape, or form. And so he is our anchor of solidarity in a world of deception. So go to Wallywood Ministries. You'll find a lot of information there, and you find links to other arenas that we're a part of, and also the revelationfile.com.
excellent.
I would also suggest our YouTube channel, and that you can find at youtube.com/RevFile TV, RevFile TV. And there you have the accumulation of what we've done video wise in the way of programs. And I do go into deeper detail in a lot of these things that we can only skip the surface of here.
Fantastic. Part 1, New World Order documents. Not a conspiracy theory. As a matter of fact, the word conspiracy theory was invented by those who
Yes.
assassinated Kennedy, folks. So that's not surprising you anymore, is it?
No.
Maybe you should listen to your friends who you thought were such.
We're wacko.
Because I've been talking the same way even since I was on the radio in 2000 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm not so crazy now, am I, folks?
No.
The spirit of Jesus is the spirit of wisdom. You tap into that, you will not only have insight, but you can see pretty clearly the headlines coming to life in the Bible, and you can walk without fear or anxiety. Take your place in history. Very exciting time to be alive, that we are alive during these times. The Bible prophecy continues to come true. And
God reserved one generation to be the last generation. And in the course of world history, that last generation had to show up at some point. And Jesus said you would know it by the signs that were being fulfilled in the lifetime of that one generation. And he said that generation will not pass away until everything had been fulfilled, which included his return.
Well, I tell you what, it's exciting times. Headline Insights with Wally Wood and yours truly. Another great show. Can't wait to get this in all your hands, folks. Be sure and share this one too. And keep looking up.
Amen.
Your salvation, redemption draws